In a place in the world that's mostly flat, where the sky is mostly white, there is a town. And there's one road leading into it from this way and one road leading out from it that way, far as the eye can see in both directions. And the last house in town, if you're going out this way, and the first house in town, if you're coming in this way, is a cottage that has been built by generations of hands with an almost mystical understanding of how things fit together to make bigger things. In the big room, all along one wall, there's a long work table with neat rows of tools. There's tools hanging on the wall, and underneath are crates, labeled, organized, categorized of spare parts and anything else you might need. There's a large dining table and chairs that are so sturdy, but not matching at all because there's not a single original splinter left of these chairs. They've been fixed so many times. There's a hearth, a fireplace as large as a man, with stones that fit together perfectly without a single drop of mortar. There's doors leading off to a small kitchen and a couple of small bedrooms. And in one of those bedrooms is where our hero was born. Her parents leaned over this bundled baby. She was so beautiful. They sighed and they said her name for the first time, Adora. And the baby gazed up at them cross-eyed and did the thing babies do where they explode out of both ends at the same time, letting everybody know what she thought of that name. So from that day forward, her parents called her Addie. And Addie is how she introduced herself. And Addie is what folks called her. Now, she had big curly hair that obeyed directions about as well as she did, which is to say, not very well at all. And she didn't have freckles, plural. She had freckle, singular. And Addie, okay, human souls, bear with me here, were shaped kind of like puzzle pieces, right? We're born with innie bits that really want to be filled by something or someone else. And then we have outie bits that are looking for somewhere else, someone else's innie bits to fill. Now, Addie, other than she didn't sleep real well, but other than that, she was born with all outie bits. She didn't have any innie bits that needed filling by anybody else. And we all know what happens to a perfectly self-sufficient woman when she meets someone with a deep need. And that's what our story is about today. Now, our story begins, Addie is a grown woman, and she wakes up each morning with the sunrise and a cup of tea and an egg that she scoops out from under a hen. And after breakfast, she ties her hair into submission and she goes out into the garden and she waits. And while she waits, she digs up potatoes. She climbs on the roof and patches it for the winter. She harvests the juiciest tomatoes you've ever seen. And she tosses scraps to the chickens. She has the eggiest, meatiest flock in town. They're also the noisiest. Now, while Addie does what most of us would call working and what she calls waiting, she's listening for folks coming up the road. See, they come to her with music boxes and wind-up toys and that genus of kitchen gadget that just does one thing. Because Addie, just like the generations before her, she can hear the song of gears and coils and springs. They sing to her of where they are broken, and when she's done, they sing to her of their wholeness. And that song, that is all Addie has ever needed. Until one day, the day our story begins, a stranger strolls into town. He introduces himself to everyone he meets, and he says everyone's name exactly how they say it. The first time and every time. It makes you feel so seen. Ugh. And he has this, the way he tips his hat is so precise. It's like a choreographed, right? It's just a delight to behold. His pants are perfectly tailored, and he walks with this rolling, measured walk in a combination that everyone of all genders agrees is just a delight to behold. Everyone is happy to see him, yes, but no one gets sad when he walks away, if you know what I mean. Now, Addie heard tell of this stranger because gossip travels faster than wild horses. And she rolled her eyes at all the sighs and the giggles until this stranger came rolling up her path and with his perfect pants and his hat tipped just so. And he said, hello. And Addie said, oh, hi. Oh, I'm Addie. And he said, hello, Addie. And her heart pounded in her ears. She could barely hear him talking, and she definitely could not look at him for more than a second. And he said, folks around here say you're the one to see when something needs fixing. And Addie nodded, and her hair nodded with her. And he said, wonderful. And he smiled this smile that could just melt the moon right out of the sky. He said, see, I'm a wanderer. But lately, in my wandering, something's been missing. Truth is, Addie, I'm feeling a little lonely. I think I need and Addie's mouth said, me. And then her brain said, huh? Who said that? Did I say that? Why would I say that? Oh my God. Fix it. A music box. Music box, kind of fill the silence on those long walks, you know what I'm talking. Okay, you get it. And he said, his eyes grew wide and his eyebrows lifted, it just a little bit uneven, and his face shone like a light had switched on inside, and he said, Addie, I think that might be just the thing. And he strolled away, and she watched him stroll away. And then she got to work. She spent a few hours pulling out all those crates of spare parts from under the work table. She pulled out all the kind of stuff she thought she might need. And then she spent an hour freaking out. A music box! A music box! I don't know music from a hen's cackle. I don't build things, I fix things. I'm real good at fixing things. Why did I think I could build a music box from scratch? And after she freaked out, she got to work. She started to fit gear, to coil, to spring, and the whole time she listened. She listened for how they wanted to fit together. She listened for that sound of wholeness each time she added a new thing. And when she was done, she sealed it all in 5 wooden sides and a lid and hope. And when that stranger came back and she handed him that music box, he said, oh, Addie, I really think this might do the trick. And he strolled away, and she watched him stroll away. But a few days later, he came back with that music box, and he handed it back to her. Addie, that music box is really great. Plays perfectly on tune, and the wood shines like magic in the firelight. But truth is, I'm still lonely. I think I need and Addie's mouth said, a date. And then her brain said, who said that? Did I say that? Why do I keep saying these things? Let's fix it. A dog. You need a dog. Man's best friend, companion on the road, the whole thing. Okay, no, you get it. And he said his eyes grew wide, and his eyebrows did that tilt thing, and his face lit up like a light switched on inside, and he said, Addie, I think a dog might just do the trick. And he strolled away, and she watched him stroll away. And then she freaked out. A dog? You can't just make a dog. I don't know a dog from a deadbolt. What in the world am I supposed to do? And after she freaked out for a while, she took a breath. She turned on her logical brain. She said, okay, here we go. Dogs are people too. Short people, okay? And people are basically machines made out of bones. Yeah, no, okay, I can work with that. And she waited for the full moon, mostly because flashlights had not been invented yet, but also because she didn't know she believed that there was magic in the moon, but if there was, she sure could use every ounce of magic she should get. So she waited for the full moon, she pulled on her tromping boots, and she grabbed a huge burlap sack, and she tromped out back behind the butcher shop, which is basically the only place a person can get bones without doing something really smelly. Behind the butcher shop, all these bones were categorized in piles by type, which was very convenient. They'd all been cleaned of their meat and boiled for gelatin, and they were very clean and not smelly at all, which was a relief. She grabbed a cow spine for a tail and some ribs from a goat and all the sort of bits and pieces she thought she might need. She filled up her burlap sack and she tromped back home and got home right at sunrise. She spent a day or so laying out all the bits and pieces that she thought she might need. She spent a day fitting pieces together, bone to bone, rib to tailbone. And where she was missing pieces, she filled in with those spare parts under the work table, gear to bone to coil, and made it all kind of fit together to where she thought it might work. Then after she finished putting it all together, she wrapped it all in strips of warm leather and smoothed it with beeswax and desire. And when she was done, she set that dog up on its haunches. It was not cute. It was not adorable in any sort of way, but it was dog-shaped. So we're just going to go with it. When she set it up, it didn't do anything. She leaned back against the wall to wait, and she immediately fell asleep and tipped over sideways along the wall. Fell into a deep sleep. Still, she's not a great sleeper, so it was still a little rocky, but tired. That night, when the moon was at her highest, Addie heard the sound of like a rattling sound, like a and then something poked her cheek. Poke, 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 poke. And Addie slit one eye open and stared into the hollow, gaping skull of this eyeless dog. And the dog nudged her cheek a little bit and then turned into 3 little circles and curled itself into the hollow of her body where she lay on the floor. What are you going to do? She draped her arm over the dog and fell into the most restful sleep she had ever had. If you've ever slept with a dog, the most restful sleep she'd ever had. When the stranger came back, she introduced him to the dog. This is Rosie. And I built a self-winding mechanism into her tail. So you don't need to feed her. You just have to make her happy once a day. She wags and it whines kind of thing. Okay, no, you get it. Great. And he looked at this dog and he said, Addie, this dog might just be the thing. And he strolled away with Rosie's bones at his side. And she watched him stroll away. But about a week later, he came back with Rosie next to him. And he said, Addie, Rosie's really great. She plays fetch. I don't gotta feed her. And she curls up next to me at night and it's so comfortable. The truth is, I'm still lonely. And he looked at her in the eyes, and for the first time, Addie allowed herself to meet his eyes for more than just a moment. And in that moment, she saw it. Inside each of his pupils, an aperture. And in that moment, she understood. The perfect, precise tip of his hat. This slinky, synchronous slide of his walk. And finally, over the beating of her own heart, she heard it. The sound of a machine that was broken. Addie got to work. She peeled off his clothes, which went basically how she had imagined it. And then she peeled off his skin, which she had never. And inside he was a mess. And a masterpiece. Gear and joint, sinew and spring, blood and oil. And here, right here in the center, she saw it. Right in the spot that aches when your soul is thirsty. A puzzle piece. Perfectly flat on every side but one, where a nearby spring had worn it away over time into a little innie bit. She filled that little innie bit with a sliver from that music box and one of Rosie's toe bones, sorry girl. And she tied it all together with a few strands of her own curly hair. She spent a week taking him apart, laying him out on the working table. And she spent a week putting them all back together. And in between, she spent a week throwing plates at chickens. Not at the chickens, but in their general direction, because it was very satisfying, the sound that they made every time. She says, "Oh, I'm just so stupid." Oh, and he's so stupid. And it's just not fair. And now I'm out of plates. So she put them all back together. And she put his clothes back on reluctantly. And she set him up in one of those sturdy dining room chairs. And she put his hat in his hands on his lap. And she laid back against the wall. And nothing happened. And she did that thing again where she just exhausted, fell asleep, sitting up and slid over to the side. And Rosie curled herself up in the hollow of her body. And Addie draped her arm over and actually got some sleep. When she woke up, the sun was setting. That's very important. The sun was setting. And her eyes were all crusted with like shop dust and rage tears, right? And so she kind of like had to wipe away the crust from her eyes. And he was sitting there in that chair, smiling at her. She sat up and her hair sat up with her. And he said, "Addie, I can never repay you. There's nothing you need, but take care of Rosie for me, would ya?" And Addie nodded, and her hair nodded. And he stood up like a well-oiled machine because, you know, she lubed just every square inch very lovingly. And he walked to the door, and here's what that looked like. So you're inside the cottage, and it's dark, and the door is here, and it's open, and sunset colors coming through, right? Pink, amber, purple, really pretty. And he stands, and he's silhouetted. Hat, shoulders, whoop, yes. And he turns and does one final hat tip. And he strolls away. And Addie follows him out to the road just to watch his backside walk away one last time. And she watches until the sunset swallows his silhouette. Addie looks down at her dog. And Rosie gazes up at her, grinning and winding herself. "Well, girl, I guess it's just you and me. Come on." And Addie walked through the twilight, past the sleeping chickens, through the fragrance of tomato leaves, and into her cottage, with Rosie's bones beside her.